Today, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We're going to be talking about utopias, top-down structures, colonialism or decolonialism, who's crafting the narrative, who's crafting the definition of terms, what's meaningful. Maybe meaningful are artists in India. It's going to be great. So, with that, take it away and let's talk utopias. So, share your screen and we'll get started. Omer, please. And hopefully, Omer is allowed to unmute himself. Can't unmute myself. So, you go to participants. This is what I did. I was able to unmute myself, but I shall attempt to make you. Oops, sorry. Okay, try it now,
Can you
Omer.
hear me now?
Yes, please.
Okay,
Excellent.
perfect. Sorry about that.
No, it's my fault.
No worries. Nice to see you again, Renee. Hello
You too.
everyone. Hi. Thank you all so much for being here. My name's Omer. I'm gonna try to be as fast as I can because I tend to overspeak a little bit, so I'm gonna try to stick to my time. But I'm Omer. I'm a participatory AI researcher, as well as a co-founder of a startup called Deliberate, where we build AI tools designed to support discussion-based group reasoning and decision making, specifically for processes like citizens' assemblies. But today, what I'm going to be talking to you through is some of my preliminary research that I've been conducting recently with support from some of my good friends and fellow researchers in the space who are on this slide about the misalignment that we've been seeing between the rhetoric and the realities of utopian visions for participatory AI development and governance. While this research is really preliminary, our main goal right now is to gather feedback and insights from people like yourselves so we can flesh this out into a full paper over the coming months. But with that said, let me get into the actual substance of stuff. Um, so as it won't be a surprise to you, I assume, over the past few years, specifically since around 2023, there's been a bit of a participatory turn in AI development where AI companies have been much more vocal and increasingly vocal about transitioning away from purely technocratic or expert-led development processes in favor of processes that are more informed by collective intelligence and public inputs. In the context of frontier AI systems specifically, so the most advanced general purpose AI models, which is what our research is focused on, participation has been increasingly positioned as a pluralistic alignment solution and a product development legitimation strategy. These kinds of narratives are advanced by the widespread use of language like collective constitutional AI, like democratic fine-tuning, as well as specific promises of more innovation, more accountability, and better and safer products for everyone. At the same time, though, several utopian narratives have also been advocated for from by researchers in the space, so whether academics or practitioners. And these include ideas that many of you will be familiar with. So it includes things like Arnstein's ladder of participation, as well as more recent sort of offerings like the AI Democracy Foundation's democracy levels work. These narratives often focus on applying the core idealistic principles of deliberative democracy to AI development. So this includes things like, the fact that political legitimacy arises from the public exchange of reasons among free and equal citizens, the fact that human preferences aren't fixed but can be transformed through dialogue, and the fact that rational consensus emerges when diverse groups deliberate in environments that are conducive to meaningful friction, dissent, and contestation. These kinds of utopian narratives, which do come from both AI companies and from the research community, are what have been driving this participatory return in AI development over the past few years. But before I get any deeper into that, I think I need to define my terms and specifically what I mean by utopian narratives. So I think this term can be understood in two different ways. Typically, what it's understood as is, any sort of desirable, aspirational, and potentially attainable vision of a state of things where everything is near perfect. This is how people tend to understand the term utopia. However, they can also be defined, as Thomas More does, as imagined states of things that have no place in reality. So visions that present compelling ideas, but that are far removed from the real world institutional conditions that are required to realize them in practice. These two conceptions are important because my presentation's main argument is going to be that most utopian visions of participatory AI, unfortunately, tend to fall under this no place definition, the second one, because they end up as ideas that never develop a credible path towards institutionalization. Um, it will probably be quite obvious to a lot of you that different utopian narratives pushed forth by different actors often conflict. So, industry players typically want to use participants as consumers who can provide valuable end user data and feedback, while academics want participants to be treated as proper rights holders, with whom power is genuinely shared in a co-creation process. However, that's not the problem this research focuses on. The core tension that we're actually concerned with is the fact that utopian narratives in this space typically fail to match up with the political economic realities of real-world AI development processes. So the main problem that we're actually seeing is that while there's an abundance of idealistic utopian visions and rhetoric around participatory AI, and there's even quite a few scattered seeds of real-world pilots that have been planted in practice. Most of these pilots and experiments have so far been disconnected one-offs, which is why it makes them no places. In other words, it's still hard to find participatory AI in the form of mature, durable, institutionalized practice, and we currently don't have a roadmap to securing a world where participatory processes are institutionalized as established conventions or norms that are embedded within the standard organizational culture and operational practices of AI companies. Um, this has been allowing basically AI companies to secure the reputational benefits and rewards of that come from the diffusion of these kinds of utopian narratives without having to actually commit permanently to those utopian promises. So the main goal of our research has been to interrogate the gap between these utopian rhetorics and the political realities of corporate control in an attempt to clarify why the institutionalization pipeline is currently broken and what this ecosystem can and needs to do in the face of this reality. So, getting into the actual meat of things, through our research, we identified six broad stages across the AI development pipeline through which these utopian visions can be realized. Um, we found generally that the three upstream development stages that you're seeing on the screen right now are the ones with the highest stakes, but where utopian visions currently most blatantly remain as no places with the lowest amount of participation. As of now, in the big AI companies, no real-world participatory AI initiatives, even pilots, exist across any of these stages, not proper ones. Let me just sort of unpack really briefly what I mean by these three different categories. So problem selection here refers to the agenda setting processes for potential AI research projects or developmental pathways. Um, and even though we're sold certain promises, or especially from researchers, there are certain utopian ideas of what this could look like in a participatory sort of world. What we're actually seeing in practice is the agendas are set exclusively by developers, and they're determined by commercial profit motives, where companies only care about securing competitive advantages with with the products they choose themselves to develop. With data collection, uh, we're talking about, gathering, annotating, categorizing training data for AI systems. And what we're seeing here is that companies are mainly just extractively scraping the open web, also scraping, AI user data, social media data as well. And then they also, on the other side, get ghost workers, typically from global south countries, to label and categorize and clean these data sets for extremely low wages, highlighting that these utopian visions at this stage are also left unmaterialized because of extraction economics. And then finally, model pre-training here refers to the construction of general purpose AI systems, specifically things like algorithm selection, model architecture, and size. And what we're seeing here is that companies constantly make opaque decisions about how they choose to pre-train their models because they have, again, strong corporate incentives to keep those processes as secret as possible by maintaining technocratic control. Uh, on these other these three stages of the development pipeline, we're actually seeing a little bit more participation. We have actually seen some real world initiatives across these three stages. So for model post training, This stage basically refers to the fine-tuning and optimization of pre-trained general-purpose AI models so that the resulting models reflect the rich diversity of societal values and user preferences, and making the resulting AI systems as beneficial to as many people as possible. This is the point in the pipeline where we've actually seen the most amount of real-world initiatives, and we've come closest to institutionalizing certain utopian visions. Where fine-tuning processes are actually distributed beyond just developers and the contract workers that they contract, by actually including end users in this part of the development stage. So one of the most well-known examples of this kind of initiative was from OpenAI. OpenAI's grant democratic inputs to AI grant program from back in 2023, where OpenAI funded 10 different teams to set up proof of concepts for democratic processes that could answer questions about what rules AI systems should follow. And while this was promising in theory, and I remember a lot of this space was really excited about this at the time, this program basically just initiated a bunch of exploratory projects without any clear implementation or adoption pathways into development decisions. And that basically just resulted in none of those experiments being further explored by OpenAI or institutionalized into their processes, probably because they didn't provide the profit-making signals or the reputational benefits that OpenAI shareholders were looking for. Another similar one here is the Anthropic's collective constitutional AI project, also from back in 2023, where Anthropic teamed up with the Collective Intelligence Project to gather public inputs from around just over 1,000 U.S. citizens using Polis to create a publicly devised constitution that was later integrated into the alignment training process of their Claude language model. Now, this example wasn't, to this day, still is the only real-world instance of members of the public actually collectively directing the behavior of a language model via an online deliberation process. And this resulting model was actually publicly deployed for all Claude users globally. So if you've ever used Claude over the past few years, you've actually used the Claude that was the result of this collective constitutional AI fine-tuning process. However, just like the OpenAI experiments, Anthropic actually never committed to permanently relying on public inputs like this. Again, presumably because of a lack of incentives to do so. So even though this was a landmark experiment at the time, it ultimately failed to become an institutionalized standard and ended up as a no-place utopian vision again. Anthropic actually just published a new constitution last month that was primarily authored by internal contributors again.
Omer, you have one, you got a wrap.
I got a wrap. Okay.
Yeah, you got
Well,
less than a minute left.
okay. All right. Well, in that case, the main point that I'm trying to make here, I was going to skip over testing and evaluation anyway, but policy and governance, a lot of you will be aware of Meta's community forums as well. That's probably the closest institutionalization thing that we've got right now because Meta has been running these processes every single year since 2022. To basically get inputs and feedback from their community on what sorts of things they should be developing and why, and what sorts of policies they should have. However, that process is also really open to participation washing. So really quickly, just the main takeaways here. We do have quite a lot of findings, and with when we actually release the paper, you'll be able to actually dig into this a little bit more. But the main thing here is that we don't have this pipeline towards institutionalization, even though we have these seeds that have been planted. Uh, and that basically means we, as a field, have two different options that are available to us. One of them is we try to fix this broken pipeline by coming up with stronger justifications for why we need participation at every stage of this pipeline and why we need sort of deeper participation or power sharing if we need it at all. And for that, we need like more persuasive narratives, as well as actual standardized processes within organizations. And then the second option is actually for us as a community to recalibrate our demands from AI developers by acknowledging these real-world political and economic constraints of AI development and maybe adapting our demands by calling for maybe targeted, more purpose-specific participation so that public participation in at least some stages of these AI development processes actually become institutionalized. I could say more, but I assume I'm out of time. So I'll,
Way out of time.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Renee. Sorry
Oh
about
my,
that.
so much we could talk about. But on share your screen. Thank you. And let's go to Matt.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and thanks for kicking us off. I presume that I can be seen and heard, and unless I get evidence to the contrary, I will proceed. So, good
Please.
morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Matt Kennedy, and I am here calling in from the Oxford Internet Institute to speak to you all about something that is near and dear to my heart. And if I am able to share my screen, I will share it with everyone else here today. So I presume that that has worked as well.
It
Uh,
works.
Wonderful. I love it when things work the first or seventh time around. So yes, I am a Marie Curie postdoctoral fellow at the Oxford Internet Institute, where, among other things, I take a look. I examine colonial history as a source of socio-technical foresight for AI systems design, and specifically the kind of social, cultural, and economic risks that AI systems entail, and specifically are kind of baked into AI systems in the process of designing, developing, deploying, and using them. So what I'm here to talk to you all about today is a very small sliver of a larger project that is inside yet still a larger project besides that. And that takes a look specifically at how, in my opinion, colonial histories, and specifically colonial histories of linguistics, may have something to tell us not only about how to think about how to achieve more responsible systems design when it comes to working on low resource language modeling projects, but also identify practices that we can perhaps take away from the identification of perhaps better systems design goals in that context. Now, if I'm successful here today, we'll cover all of this ground. Something tells me that I will have to speed things up to a perhaps uncomfortable pace, somewhere in between going over the state of the art and going beyond the state of the art. But I'll do my best to ensure that that transition is less painful than perhaps it could otherwise be. So overall, yes, I'd like to review these kind of three components of the problem as I see it, the problem as the field sees it, and perhaps some solutions, or at least some value that approaching this kind of a problem of doing more responsible low resource language modeling might be able to sort of, formulate when we consider a deeper colonial history that goes into these kinds of conversations. So I know that a lot of us are probably familiar with the problem that we're talking about here. Why is it that there are low resource languages when it comes to NLP research in the first place? And second of all, what precisely does that mean? A little bit of background here. I'm sure, as we're all aware, even though a very small portion, relatively speaking, of the world speaks English as a native language, or English language varieties as a native language, and a slightly larger but still a small portion of the world speaks English as an additional or a second language. More than almost half of the text on the internet is in some kind of English language variety, and that has a pretty important implication for how it is that we do NLP research, and therefore how we build LLMs, which these days is the prevailing approach to doing NLP research. These kinds of conditions produce a sociolinguistic bias. Again, I'm sure this is not news to everybody, but breaking it down by these numbers, I think reveal some of the magnitudes of that bias, perhaps in ways that we haven't really thought about before. Now, just to add a historical dimension here, yes, this may be a good snapshot of the sociolinguistic bias baked into LLMs these days, but also we have to consider that there's a deeper and historical bias towards English language and against lower source languages in NLP research in general. After all, a lot of the foundational kind of NLP data sets were all English language varieties, and many of them very specifically English language varieties that are more likely to be well represented within an English language family in general. For example, edited English is one of the main sources of corpora for all of these NLP data sets. And Enron, of course, is an email data set, but again, conducted primarily in a certain variety of English. All this to say, English bias NLP research is not only a function of how things are today, but a function of how NLP research has been for quite some time now, which produces this problem of like, oh, okay, well, if everything is in English, then then how is it that we overcome this kind of a problem? How is it that we ensure that the LLMs that we develop are also functional, usable, safe, trustworthy for people who are not speaking an English language variety as either their first or their second or additional language. This problem we might think of if it has a historical component, surely it's been solved in the era of deep learning, where a lot of these language data sets have become just so large, where Common Crawl has become such an important source of language data. Well, again, because nearly half of the half of the language data collected from the internet comes from sources that are in English. English remains dominant amongst all of these pre-training corpora. And in fact, in many cases, the people who have been responsible for developing very large, massive text databases systematically removed non-English language data from those databases in order to actually produce some of the LLMs that we're familiar with today. And in fact, in a big survey of language data sets from Liu et al. From a couple of years ago, they found that prior to 2010, exactly zero pre-training corpora featured non-English languages as a result of that kind of data processing technique prior to 2010. This is a problem. Many people, of course, including people who have presented at this symposium and brought more broadly at the summit, where it's a major focus of the summit, have looked to try to understand both, first of all, why it is that this problem has been produced, and second of all, what we might do to overcome it. A number of really interesting works, I think, have emerged over the last couple of years from different sectors of the NLP research community, many of whom argue either for better categories, moving, for example, from understanding low-resource languages as low-resourced languages. Notice the trailing D here to reflect the fact that language data is not just natural, it's something that's produced. Data sets for NLP are produced. It reflects a certain kind of research priority, but also resource allocation priority. And that's an important consideration when it comes to doing more responsible NLP. Two, arguing for better practices. For example, treating language as not just language data, but culture. Understanding that it can't just be plucked. Language can't just be plucked, and language data can't just be plucked from the web. It has to be situated and very carefully into cultural context, into social context, in fact, into interaction context, in order for the meaning, I suppose you could say, to be modeled just as well as the syntax. But, even though these, I think, are really important advances and important discussions to keep having, a lot of people have started to ask, well, has this turn in more responsible NLP techniques led to better outcomes? And I think this is where the conversation, again, becomes very interesting, because you answer this kind of a question with another question. Well, outcomes for whom? And here, I think, is where it's very valuable to consider the colonial history of linguistics, because I think in the course of answering the question of, well, who is it that is benefiting primarily from this turn in this technique-driven turn in responsible NLP, especially when it comes to lower source languages? Well, colonial history has a lot to offer us here. And specifically, along three different lines. Are responsible techniques enough to deliver more responsible lower source language modeling? Perhaps. But one thing I think that it behooves us to do is to think through precisely who it is to whom most of the benefit of this technique-driven turn accrues. On the one hand, colonial language modeling offers us foresight because just like today, we find ourselves sort of in the context of an emerging science. It's a novel science, and specifically, it's a very interesting science because the techniques that are being proposed then as now were highly advanced for the time. So again, we're kind of finding ourselves in this technique-driven innovation moment that may or may not be sufficient because of these other two considerations. The first of which we've heard about a little bit earlier, and that is that with any highly technical application of solutions, one needs, a comparable amount of expertise, at least some people would argue, to determine whether or not the techniques that you're following are actually being successful. And this has led, in many cases, to the sort of situation where the validation of highly advanced techniques requires expert authority. And even though the development of low resource language modeling or language technologies may involve some participatory methodologies, for example, more participatory, more responsible data collection and preservation techniques. At the same time, I think many have observed, including our prior speaker, that at the same time, this has also led in many cases to a greater involvement of a kind of like technocratic authority when it comes to validating the results and certainly exploiting the results when it comes to developing commercial technologies based on perhaps more participatory data collection techniques. All of this to me suggests that it's possible that we're experiencing another sort of discourse of protection when it comes to developing a number of these systems, and especially when we're considering the discourse surrounding the expansion of NLP research into the low resource language modeling space. And I think
Matt,
this is
you're at time.
at time. All right. Well, I think that's okay because I will move on very quickly to just these final couple of points here. Getting into protectionism, it's as I've been developing the argument towards previous to this, protectionism is it's one of these kinds of discourses by which good intentions may, and according to the record of the colonial past, have led to harmful outcomes in a number of different ways. And looking forward, how we sort of perhaps overcome the limitations of a technique-driven approach to this very important problem of ensuring more responsible low resource NLP research, I think, is to first of all be able to recognize different protectionist developmentalities as they might appear to us today. And here are four different aspects of this kind of protectionism that I and others have observed in this context, which we'll skip over a more detailed look at right now. And second of all, perhaps more practically, consider a number of diagnostic questions that can help you identify and help systems designers in general identify whether or not one is slipping into this paradigm of good intentions leading to potentially harmful results. And yes, I am at time, so I will stop. I will leave you with these kind of concluding points here. Responsible goals, just as important as responsible techniques. It's an important conversation to have. Colonial histories of linguistics can shed important light, I think, as to whether or not people are following responsible goals as well as responsible techniques. And yes, it's difficult, but it's critically important, and especially these days as the world is adopting these technologies at scale. So if any of that resonates, feel free to be in touch with me. Looking forward to questions and also looking forward to future speakers. And I hope I haven't trod on your time too much. So thank you all for your attention.
Thank you so much, Matt. I'm sorry to have rushed you and Omer because our third speaker has not shown up, which means we're going to go to Kevser right away. But that being said, if people want to switch over to room B, we got to keep time. But I'm delighted to see Kevser. Looking forward to her talk. So please share your screen. You're unmuted. Say hello to make sure we
Oh,
can hear you. Excellent. I heard
thank
something.
you. Okay, just a minute. I will share the screen with you.
Beautiful. Please start. We can't hear anything.
Sorry, just now I didn't notice it. So, do you hear me very well right now?
Yes, excellent.
Okay, great. So, this is Kevser Salih. I'm joining you from Syria. This presentation will be will be about a research part of my master's thesis. I was researching the participatory, or let's say democratization of AI from international relations perspective, and I studied Saudi Arabia's case in which a government tried to contribute to democratizing AI in a case of techno-nationalist project. So where did it all start? As my peer colleagues mentioned, that a language real-world presence does not really equal its representation in large language models. That goes for a lot of long story and history, but there were some solutions that came from tech industry that worked partly. Another type of solutions that are very interesting in my opinions are the government solutions, in which governments try to work on developing an LLM from scratch. That kind of solution happened in not in all, let's say, in the three big GCC countries, Gulf countries, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. In this research, I tried to take a look on the three cases of those countries. So, as a theoretical framework, I found it very interesting to acknowledge the agency of governments in democratizing AI and to be able to evaluate the results they have came with. But as I'm studying it from the international relations perspective, I chose techno-nationalism paradigm and soft power theory to, let's say, to understand how those initiatives are working in the society and whether if they are reaching their goal of being of democratizing AI or going to only in a way that they are helping the governments to maintain their legitimacy. The methodology was basically process tracing. I've created, let's say, dots, and I've connected them to explain how it's a techno-nationalist project that, although it's an LLM and the main goal was to only democratize the Arabic language in AI and to maintain its presence, but it's at the same time, it's a techno-nationalist project that became a soft power tool for the government, in my case, Saudi Arabia government. So as I'm going with the presentation, I will explain all those details, which I will just give a very quick introduction here. I started from the time that the government change was happening in Saudi Arabia when Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince right now, came to the power, and the changes that happened in power that allowed such a change in the whole nation identity to become to appear, and later how AI became a pillar of that new national identity, and LLM was just a very core part of that whole vision. So those states, Gulf states, are trying to move from traditional hydrocarbon oil to a new oil, which is data, as they explain it. I'm not really gonna talk about the US-China rivalry right now, although it can make sense, but this is the main point. They are trying to put to use the new data, the data as the new oil. They have really high level of connectivity, e-government, and smart city. Also, the AI readiness are one of the highest in the Middle East, or actually the highest, the UAE, Saudi Arabia. Although they have good infrastructure, digital infrastructure, they are still struggling with the talent, as all those projects actually has just started 10 years ago. In UAE was the first one who started it. Later, Saudi Arabia, they are trying to improve the education, the talents, but they're still lower than the Western countries. National visions are very core pillar to understand the whole point we are speaking about in this research, because all those the AI, let's say, visions started from a vision that the country, like a very broad nation vision that the country created. In Saudi Arabia, it was Vision 23. In UAE, it was first 2031, and they have also a special, let's say, an AI strategies that have started from 2018. The model of AI development in the Gulf countries are not really driven by private sector. It's totally driven by government initiatives and investments. Not only investments, but initiatives, which means that they are the main developers of AI sector, and creators are actually government entities. So the three countries of GCC, UAE, and Saudi Arabia, and this is UAE, this is Qatar. They have created their own LLM. Qatar created Fanar, Saudi Arabia created Allam, and UAE created JICE. They all explain them. I've just tried to like compare the discourse. They introduced their LLM. They all explain them as support Arabic dialects and fluent in the culture, religiously aware. They try to preserve Arabic heritage and culture, and they emphasize the sovereignty in those initiatives. That led me to, like, I wouldn't say this is a comparative angle, but that led me to say to understand that the context is the same for the three cases. Allam, which is my case here, has emerged in a meeting with Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince, and the CEO right now of Allam, who is Tariq Amin. And Allam wouldn't really have emerged if Trump wasn't in power right now, and wouldn't be right now if it wasn't the first Trump visit to Saudi Arabia in the second election. That's why this photo is very essential for our research. So, since King Salman acceding to the throne in 2015, Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince, and his son launched Vision 2030, and he reoriented the Public Investment Fund, which now allocate the main financial resources in Saudi Arabia, and the political and social power are now centralized under Mohammed bin Salman. In 2030, it wasn't only an economic agenda, it has very ideational agendas, like emphasizing on modern Islam, and new Saudism. So there was a new liberal discourse that decoupled economic reform from demands for political participation. This is a very core point here, because although they are going to a private sector, they're trying to encourage the private entities in the country. There's a decoupling from any kind of political participation for citizens. And
You have less than 1 minute. You have less than
Okay,
1
so
minute left.
okay. As for AI, 66 out of 96 vision goals are directly related to AI, in which Sadaya was created. When Sadaya was created, the Saudi authority of AI, let's say, they created Alam, which is Sadaya actually is a governance and implementation capacity. It has both. So they govern and they created an initiative such Alam. Later, Alam moved to Human, that is a full stack ambition like entity under the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia that I've told you like moments before a little time. I told you the Tariq Amin. Alam really emphasizes the cultural alignment point. They claim that LLMs in general overrepresent particular regions. That's why AI democratization is now on the part of Saudi Arabia as a part of global South and Middle East and Arabic countries. This is the kind of Alam diffusion channels I've tried to explain. They tried to export it to foreign countries, make it
Sorry,
available
Kevser,
for developer
can you
communities.
wrap?
And yeah,
Okay.
conclusion.
Oh, excellent.
So yeah, this is the conclusion. Sorry, I'm sorry if the research point wasn't really clear because of the time. So I've just came to the conclusion that yes, AI development in Saudi Arabia is not an isolated technological endeavor. It's embedded within a broad state-led transformation project, Vision 2030, that aims to reshape the national identity. It also works as a soft power tool, but still information. It emphasizes the multiplicity and the agency of Saudi Arabia in, let's say, international relations sphere. But at the end of the day, when we speak about participatory AI design, it's not really there in our case. It's totally from top down. The governments are leading the conversation. Citizens are not really engaged in any type. So this was my research. I'm open for any questions you have.
So we'll leave questions to the end, but there are many, many questions about the definition of soft power here and how soft it really is. Thank you. And we found our third speaker, now our fourth speaker. So if you would stop sharing your screen, and we'll move on to Priyanka, and we'll talk about artistry, which I'm really excited to hear.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
And you start screen sharing and you're good to go.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Priyanka Pal, and today I am going to present our paper, Negotiating Machine Vision, Community Intelligence and AI Participation in Kumartuli, Kolkata, India. Today I want to take you to Kumartuli in North Kolkata, a neighborhood whose clay idol makers have shaped the visual imagination of Durga Puja for generations. Kumartuli is not simply a craft cluster. It is an ecosystem that embodied knowledge, ritual discipline, and collective labor. We entered this space with a question that is increasingly urgent, that what does participation mean in the age of generative AI when text-to-image system can imagine deities? What happened to communities whose lives are dedicated to materializing the divine through clay, straw, pigment, and devotion? To understand this, we had to understand Durga not as an image, but as a process. The making of Durga idol unfolds through ritualized sequence, constructing bamboo armatures, building straw, layering clay in stages, sculpting facial expression, painting eyes, the sacred moment of Chokkudan. Each step is temporarily choreographed and socially distributed. The idol is never the product of a single artisan, it emerges through interdependence, skeletal builders, clay modelers, ornament designers, painters, transporters, etc. Divinity here is assembled through collective intelligence. Here we put few steps, and the step 8 is the final product that we see in the puja pandals in Kolkata. Now our study was conducted over 4 months between May and August 2025 in Kumartuli, Kolkata, West Bengal, India. Our research team associated of ethnographers, anthropologists, artists, and computer scientists rooted in South Asia. One of our team members, that is me, had deep personal ties to Kumartuli. My family has been involved in this idol making process for generations. So this helped the insider researcher position, helped me as an insider researcher position, enabled access while requiring sustained reflexivity regarding trust, interpretation, and to understand the power dynamics. Now we conclude. We conducted 27 structured, semi-structured interviews with idol makers, each averaging approximately 95 minutes. Participants spoke about their roles in the idol making process, sources of inspiration, workshop hierarchies, gender dynamics, economic challenges, technological exposures, and concern about their challenges. Only 3 participants were women, reflecting the gender structure of this field. All participants were compensated at the standard hourly rate of their trade. We also conducted 2 focus group discussions, each lasting 3 hours with 12 artisans across specialization and age group. These sessions systematically mapped the full life cycle of idol production, from taking orders to immersion rituals. Now, beyond the interviews, we specially mapped 9 workshops. We documented material flows, how straw becomes structure, how clay moves through stages, how partially completed idols inhabit constrained interiors, etc. We trace workshop interdependencies like shared labor, borrowed materials, collaborative problem solving. So Kumartuli is not a set of isolated studios. It is an infrastructural network embedded in Kolkata's urban fabric. We also examined artisans' digital presence. Some maintain websites, social media pages, often with assistance from young family members. Workshops keep physical photos, album documenting annual creations. These archives are not merely promotional, they are repositories of stylistic evolution, client expectation, and aesthetic experimentation. Digital platforms already form part of their ecosystem, though in uneven and pragmatic ways. We began with the broad inquiry that has the recent boom in technology affect traditional idol making practices? Through pilot interviews, we realized that idol making intersect with HCI in highly context-specific ways. We therefore focus specially on design and making the goddess of Durga. This allowed us to examine how aesthetics, devotion, affect, and technical craft converge in a single ritual object. Now in co-design session, we introduce generative text to image system that is capable of producing visual. Sorry, yeah. In co-designing session, we introduced generative text-to-image system that is capable of producing visual interpretation of Hindu deities. Artisan responded not with fear or simple rejection. Instead, they asked precise questions. How does the machine know proportion? How does it understand ritual posture? Can it capture the devotional mood embedded in the eyes? They immediately identified what AI couldn't see, that is the rhythm, tactility, collective labor, and spiritual intentionality. Rather than framing AI as a threat to authenticity, many artisans approached it as a conversational medium. They experimented with prompts, uh, inserting local idioms and culturally specific references. They compared outputs with traditional iconographic norms. They critiqued inaccuracies in hand gestures and facial expressions. Participants here was neither compliance nor refusal. It was a negotiation. In integrating with AI generated images, artisans often articulated their own expertise more explicitly. They described how clay must be layered in a particular moisture conditions. They explained how emotional expression is shaped by subtle curvature in the eyelids. They emphasize collective correction process within workshops. AI become a mirror through which they define what makes their practice irreducibly human. We interpret these encounters as revealing community intelligence. This is not intelligence located in an individual artisan. It is distributed across the workshops, generations, ritual calendars, and urban infrastructures. When artisans collectively debate whether an AI generated Durga looks right, they enact a shared epistemology, one grounded in life tradition and iterative practice. Now, artisans also redirected AI's creative assumptions. They question dataset bias. They notice homogenization in generated outputs. They worried about aesthetic flattering across the regions. At the same time, they imagine constructive uses, design education for apprentices, archiving endangered motif, visualizing new festival forms. Their engagement combined critique with imagination. In Kumartuli, participation is not about integrating artisan into global AI pipeline. Instead, artisans simply teach machines and designers about cultural specificity, ritual temporality, and material aesthetics. Participation becomes dialogical. The community reshapes the technological frame even as it is experiment within it. The encounter foregrounds plural philosophies of intelligence. Generative AI encodes statistical pattern recognition. Idol making encodes embodied memory, apprenticeship, devotion, and collective calibration. This system do not simply replace one another. They operate on different ontological assumptions about creativity and care.
Priya, can you wrap?
Yeah, sure. Our study suggests that meaningful AI participation can emerge from communities that hold their own philosophies of creation. Kumartuli does not represent nostalgia or resistance to modernity. It represents negotiated futurity. When technology is filtered through local values, materials, rituals, and economic realities. In this space, AI becomes less a force of disruption and more a site of conversation. So we made this app to assist idol makers, and this will help them in like designing and financial modules. Thank you for your kind attention.
So if you want to stop sharing, Priya, and then we'll go to the discussion. Priya, I was blown away. I had to stop taking notes on this. It was so good. So, Matt, maybe we'll start with you. And would you actually share the question that you responded to? Because I think that that question speaks to a number of talks in this session. So, Matt, are you still there? Excellent. Do you want to unmute yourself, Matt? Matt, can you unmute? Oh, okay. Can you unmute yourself?
Ah, there we go. I think that
There you
works.
go. Yeah, it works.
Yes, I apologize. A big storm just blew through and knocked out my internet for a second, so I've lost my my chat. But if I remember correctly, the question was, well, given the nature of kind of structural sociolinguistic bias for English in NLP systems, how do we actually come up with solutions? Is English baked in too much? And I would say a number of things to that, but if I guess I'll summarize my comment made in there. There's a lot of really great work going on right now, especially over the last year, and a lot of it is being profiled at the summit currently. That is community led. It's led by researchers who are working, in their, I guess you could call them home communities or in adjacent communities that are developing NLP resources for low-resourced language varieties. And that's essential, I think, if we're going to achieve more responsible language modeling just in general. It's not always the case that languages that have high linguistic resources are those that also have a large number of resources that are available to support NLP research. And so this kind of a first step, I guess you could say, is essential for those communities who are interested in developing those technologies, either for themselves, for the world, for science, et cetera, et cetera. What makes it difficult, of course, is, yes, that's a wonderful example. Yeah. Thank you, Omer. If everybody looks at the link in the chat, this is really great and kind of like high profile example of some of these more regionally led initiatives. At the same time, this is where I feel that allowing ourselves to question not just like the techniques of NLP research, but also the goals, the end goals, as well as the instrumental goals of NLP research is so important, because at the end of the day, the real question is, to whom does the value really accrue? It may be that communities get a good amount of value out of producing these NLP resources and even wholesale LLMs for their own use. But it's very possible, and in many cases that I've observed in the course of this research, almost always, at least slightly the case, that these resources, once they're published, they can be integrated into technologies, products, offerings put out there by big LLM developers. And that isn't, those are structural conditions in which the value developed by these local language modeling projects can be sort of subsumed into big tech, so to speak. It doesn't always have to be that way. But given, for example, Omer and others at this symposium are talking about, it's often the case that those kind of structural imbalances of power, of technical resources, makes it just very easy for ultimate value to accrue to platforms and to those that can host and develop and really push those kinds of technologies out into the world. So it's a complicated question, but thank you for asking it.
And perhaps we can get Kevser to weigh in on this as well, because here we have Arabic, and I'm presuming a particular dialect of Arabic being introduced as its own language, its own language in an LLM. And I'm also wondering about adding more languages becomes a part of the soft power. I'd also argue, and Kevser, so if you could speak to that as well, but also this transition to hard power, because I wonder if we're really talking about hard power here.
So you're asking about a large language model being a soft power?
Yeah, so start off by talking about here we live in this global mishmash of languages being added to large language models or created anew. And so, should we just be adding a new language? Do we have to fundamentally redesign the large language models? And also, is it really soft power or is it more hard power as we move to techno-nationalism?
So, like redesigning the whole large language model so it can audition better in an Arabic language is a question actually. The claim that Alam comes with that they incorporated data that are not really available online, Arabic data that can understand the nuances of the language, the culture. They always complain about Western LLMs not really representing the mentality of the society, which is a question for me. Like, what is the problem about it? Is there any kind of constraint you want to introduce to that large language model that you are trying to justify it by saying this is a cultural aligned, large language model? This is something we need to actually discuss. Being a soft power, the way I try to say it's a soft power tool, it's because it's a government tool. So all the government entities in Saudi Arabia use Alam in their everyday institutional operations. It's already available in a deemed cloud, which is a government cloud. It's already also available for foreign Arabic countries. They're trying to lead in that kind of Arabic AI revolution, let's say. So they're exporting to, for example, now it's being exported free to Syria. It's on process for exporting to other Arab countries. So there is somehow a kind of dominance request in this, especially between UAE and Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is trying now to enter the sphere that UAE have dominated for so long, technology, by saying that we have the best AI Arabic tools. In this way, actually, I've tried to say it's a soft power tool. Also, the last point about soft power, Alam now is being used in a full stack operational system. So it has an PC, an operation system, which is not really now available for public, but it's announced. So they have Alam AI PC, or Humane, the corporate name, and they have also an operation system which all works totally on Alam LLM, the Arabic large language model. So in this way, I've said that it's a software information. If it explains the point, try to.
No, it's absolutely fascinating. I said in the chat, soft power is shadow IT. So people are using LLMs whether or not their government agency says they should be using LLMs. But it is absolutely fascinating. Omer, I want to go to you and I want to ask you a question about whether or not you have to redefine utopia as chaos and developer control, and whether or not that tension, the tensions between the utopian and the praxis can ever be reconciled. And it sounds like you're saying no. Wait a minute. Can you unmute yourself? Nuts. Okay. Try it
Okay,
now.
I think we're good. Yeah. I really like that observation. I think I personally I wouldn't want to redefine utopia as chaos. Yeah, but I think by definition, in alignment with that first definition I said of utopias, so sort of by design, these things are aspirational, right? They are idealistic. They're really hard to achieve, if not impossible. So I think there will always be this tension of not being able to realize utopian visions. That's just sort of part of the game. But I think the real issue here is the fact that sort of what gets institutionalized and what doesn't get institutionalized is completely up to the big players at the moment. And that's the main sort of challenge that I think my research is trying to highlight. And it's also it's trying to bring a dose of reality, I guess, to this research ecosystem right now. Um, and I don't think there's a problem with the utopian visions themselves. That's why there's a reason why there's an abundance of them, and all of them are, rigorously researched, argued, justified. But the problem that we face is these real life institutional sort of realities, right? There are political factors at play here, there are economic factors at play here, and ultimately we need to acknowledge that the people who care about the realization of these utopian visions are usually not the ones who are the decision makers at AI companies. So I think the main thing that I would want people to take away from the presentation is mainly um, of us really just being intentional with our demands as a research community. Um, of course, more participation, more democratic processes can, in an idealistic sense, in a vacuum, be better. But if they come at the cost of just staying stuck at these no places, of never becoming institutionalized, in at least not even in sort of partial ways, I think that's the real risk. And that's why right at the end, my one of my potential calls for action for the space was maybe we should reconsider some of our demands, or at least some of our communication skills as a research ecosystem for talking about our demands, so that the big companies who do get to have the power to make the consequential decisions ultimately do listen to us at least sometimes, and integrate these sorts of processes into their operational practices basically. So don't change the utopias, but maybe change the communication strategies so that more of them get realized in practice.
Thanks, Omer. Priya, are you still there? I need to see if Priya is still there.
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Oh, excellent, excellent. So I was blown away by the concept divinity is a form of collective intelligence. So I want to ask two questions. One, is participation a form of divinity? And second of all, is uh, generative AI a form of divinity or a form of collective intelligence as well?
Um, so in terms of AI, when we are trying to apply it on Indian context, like it's a huge number of people there, like human centric labor is involved in this idol making process, a huge kind of. In each step, there is a certain precision, there is certain technology. It is not that it is not a one-step process. So when we are generating images like the Durga, goddess Durga, what kind of a goddess Durga. I want an image of goddess Durga, and I ask generative AI. It gives something that is delusional, which is not. I can't the participants, the artisan can't relate that with the goddess we are imagining, that the Indians imagine how the goddess Durga should. It gives something like a Avengers goddess wearing a Avenger suit or something like that. It is on the air. It doesn't like how we look at the goddess Durga. It has 10 hands, like a traditional features of the Durga idol that we are worship, having 10 hands, having a demon, having some animals, especially lion and some others, and she is on the top of them. And when it comes with the AI generated images, if Durga is there, but the other icons are missing. But when we worship, it is the full set of worshiping. It is not only the Durga we are worship, it is also the demon, also the lion. So AI, we are not convincing, and the idol makers are very particular about their designs. Like the artisans, each one have their unique style. When it will come to AI, it present a similar kind of work, similar image, which may be which like for artisans it is difficult to accept. So we are presenting them, and they came with the problem with the AI, what AI can't do. It is not that what AI can do, but why AI can't do. They criticize the divinity of the image that AI created. So in terms of how AI can help the artisan community, we are searching that. From the search to search that, we started to digging that what kind of problem that AI have, that the artisans that the in their eye, because the image of a goddess and the goddess is not only an image. There is lots of emotion, cultural significance, symbols, different things. Divinity itself is associated with that, which AI can't generate, which is missing in AI. Like maybe a little bit they can train in future, I don't know. But yeah, we are trying to find those, and we are trying to find how AI can help these artisans or empower those artisans, how, in which way. So we came up with two one a app which can create some designing models which help them to design the design changes the structures. And in terms of AI and the participation in this idol making process, human participation since everywhere, we are trying to find out that where AI can stand in this profession or in this artistic creativity. So for now it is criticized. Maybe in future, if we develop more, it may be accepted, like they accept more this.
And on that note, thank you, Omer, Matt, Priya, and Kevser. This was absolutely wonderful. And we're going to move on to the posters now. Bye.